All right, and welcome back once again. Another awesome week here in the brand new year. Can't believe it's 2021, but welcome back here to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. Excited for today's guest. You've already seen him on the description here. I'm just going to get right into him because he's a dear friend, a mentor, if you will. I'm just so blessed to have this guy on the podcast today. Help me welcome Coach O, Mr. Charles Oliver. Charles, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you, Mike.
So do I call you Charles? Do I call you Mr. Oliver, Coach O? What's our moniker for today's conversation?
Coach O is more than fine. It's more than fine.
All right, good, good. That's how everybody knows you. I'll sometimes mention your name and they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, Coach O. Oh, Coach O. That's awesome. So, Charles, again, so thankful and grateful you'd be with us today. You and I have known each other. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was ever since I was at Troy University. So over 20 years, and have seen you do a bunch of different things and have been blessed to work with you on some different projects and stuff. So I'm excited to kind of peel back the layers of the onion here and get to learn more about you and your history in our great sport today.
All right, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's start with today. You have an interesting position. You always have interesting positions. You don't do anything that's boring. I've noticed. That's one thing I have known for the 20 years I've known you. But in today's role, one of your roles is national chairman of AAU track and field.
Yeah.
For us that maybe don't know a lot about AAU and specifically AAU track and field, outside of it's been around forever, it's a juggernaut in our sport. Tell us about AAU track and field and your role as the national chairman for track.
Okay. Well, my role is national chairman for track and field. First of all, I'll say that we currently have a little over 63, thousand youth, ages, 5 to 18. My position, as I see it, is to provide direction and guidance for the youth of America. We truly believe that we are a developmental program for track and field here in this country. Everybody, especially in this upcoming year, it's an Olympic year, and everybody is watching the Olympic Games and want to be a gold medalist, and all of that. But you don't start at the finish line, and we want people to realize that although you don't start at the finish line, there is a starting line, and we pride ourselves on being the start line and getting kids involved and developing them to where they can go on and be, successful. One, not only just in the sport of track and field, but also in every aspect, of life. So my role is to provide developmental programs, and to steer our kids in positive directions. And there's some people, as we get into the conversation that you met while, in Troy, that provided that type of direction, for me. And I'm so appreciative of all of that. And I keep all of them, in my thought processes. And I utilize those experiences to try to pass it on, to the youth of America.
That's a unique portion of AAU versus like, I don't want to call them competitors, but maybe in the same vein, the USATF series. So, they have youth and of course masters and such. But you on AAU side focus only on the 15 to 18-year-olds.
Well, our focus is on the youth 5 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
Within the last 5-6 years since I've been national chairman, we've implemented an open and masters division, also.
Oh,
So
okay.
that we can actually provide programs, for all age groups. So we say, from 5-year-olds, all the way up, that there is something up under the AAU, umbrella, for you. And just trying to, be an entity that's there, for the sport instead of waiting on a polished individual, to come to us. We're trying to provide the groundwork to, the foundation for the future.
See, I wasn't aware of the master's portion of AAU because I'm still so young and young at heart. So I don't, I'm not there just yet. I feel like, and my wife accuses me sometimes of still acting like I'm in the 5-year-old category. So that's more where my realm is. But I do love how you put that though about, everybody wants to become the gold medalist or whatnot, whatever your goal is. The goal is at the finish line, but you don't start there. You have to start at the start line, and AAU provides that start line. I love that.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, no, I was going to say, so talk to me about, you said you've been the chairman now for the past 5 or 6 years. So tell me about your start line of becoming the chairman.
Um, well, it goes back. I'm trying to see, to be the national chairman. I think it goes back to when I was actually the AAU Junior Olympic Games meet director.
Mm.
Um, Working at the University of Tennessee, AAU came to Knoxville, and a part of my job as at the University of Tennessee, and at this time I had got out of coaching out and I was in the event management. So for the event to come to the city of Knoxville, visit Knoxville, at that time, that organization, Sports Commission, came to the university and asked us, would we be receptive to hosting the meet? So my job was to handle all of the financial arrangements and contracts and all of that. Not only just for the sport of track and field, but to make sure that we had all of the venues and stuff secured. So we did that, and the meet was very successful. It went well, and I was the local guy. After they left, the current national chairman at that time, left the organization or left that role, and they asked me would I be interested in being meet director. And at that time, I had no thought processes about doing anything outside, the university. And so I said I would consider it, and I, tried it, for a year and found out that I loved it, you know. So I said, well, hey, this is something that I'll really, go after. And after doing that for a number of years, the position, there was an election for national, chairman, and some people around me thought that I might, be good, in a position. Um, and so I decided to run, and the reason really that I decided to run, because there's some things in the sport of track and field, as I said, to go back to, first of all, some people at Troy University, and back to when I was in high school, and the people that are part of my foundation. And I looked at being national chairman was an opportunity to give back and to implement some things that were near and dear to me, but from a much bigger platform than anything that I was already, a part of. So I was like, well, hey, if I can be national chairman, then I can be in the front of the organization or be a part of the foundation in strengthening the foundation for programs that would be, strong for development of kids.
What when you become the national chairman of of a sport for AAU, is it a 2-year term, 4-year terms?
It's a 4-year term.
4 years. So you're in your second term.
Yes, yes.
You must have done something right if they voted you for another term, because they could have said no.
Yeah, they chose to reelect me for a second term, and I look at it as an opportunity, as I said, now to continue with some of the programs we've put in place, and just to build upon the future.
Do they have a term limit, or is this something you could pursue in the next 4-year cycle?
Currently, there are no term limits other than like I said, a 4-year limit. But every
Mhm.
4 years you can run, and if you are elected, you're there for another 4 years.
Don't sound too enthusiastic about that, Coach. Come on.
Hey, it's something that you want to do. Sometimes they say, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. So I wanted it, got it, and it's a lot of fun work, a
Yeah.
lot of fun work.
Yeah, fun and work. Right. That's right. There's no vacation on this. This isn't a honorary title. This is a working title.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that I found quite interesting. You talked about, and we'll get into it more here in a little bit later, about the meet management side of specifically the AAU meet when you were at Tennessee. The AAU held a meet this summer, I think, right, or fall. I'm gonna call it a modified national championship. Is that a proper
Junior Olympic Games this
Junior
summer.
Olympics? Yeah.
Around the first of
Um,
all.
what goes in, and we'll put a pin on the actual championships here in a second, but what goes into, you hear a lot of times when you're listening to chatter on the internet, and I know everybody's going to say don't listen to it, but everybody's on it, so we're all listening to it. But when they talk about, like, an example of Hayward Field is hosting the Division I national championships for many years in a row, and they talk about, well, gosh, it should be in New York, or it should be in Miami, or whatever. But they're forgetting sometimes they're forgetting that people have to have to bid for those, and bidding process and the actual running the meet is a lot bigger than just running the meet. What goes into hosting a meet of this caliber, of a national championship, a JOs, anything like this? That what goes on in the background that maybe we just don't see? We just show up and watch the kids run.
Well, I tell you, one of the, and I don't know what I'm gonna call it, the funniest things or the biggest joke or the most ironic, statement that I hear on a regular basis. People will ask, well, when do you start planning, for the event? And to me, that is so funny and so ironic because planning to me never stops.
Mm.
I'm the type of individual that if I'm involved in something, I like to plan it a year out. Okay. So literally, while I am going within 6 months of the current meet that I'm getting ready for, I'm starting the 12-month plan for the next one.
Mm.
So there's a 6-month period where I am literally planning two events at the same time. And just to give you an idea of AAU Junior Olympic Games, and I'm gonna get into some specifics about the planning process, but when I first came on board with AAU, for example, we in Knoxville, I think we had about 6,500 athletes in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
My first year of being the meet director, we had 8,500 athletes. This past year at North Carolina A&T, we had 13,601, athletes.
Wow.
So when I tell you we're the largest youth meet in the world, I from research, I don't know of any other track meet that have kids 5 to 18, ages 5 to 18, that have had more than 13. The Olympic Games is a huge event, but they've never had that many athletes. So 13,601. Just there in the planning, process, for the officials, we have, I think for that meet, we utilized 216 officials that we brought in, for that meet. You're bringing them in from all over the country. We had officials from Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Bermuda, that came in as a part of our officiating group. So we had officials from all over the country, some parts of the world. You had to house them, clothe them, feed them, transportation for all of that. Then you have to plan for the actual, track meet itself in terms of a time schedule. And, we spend months and months and hours looking at first anticipating whatever location we're going to. We spend hours just anticipating the potential number of athletes that we could possibly get, and then having to put a track schedule, together to accommodate that. One of the pet peeves on the event management side for myself and people that are around me, you hear a lot of times that spectators, they go to a track meet and they expect to be there all day. It's understandable if you're an hour or you're 2 hours, behind schedule, because that's track and field. I totally disagree, with that. And I'll say some people won't agree with what I'm saying, but if you spend the time, on it, then you can put together a track schedule that's something that you can live with, and people don't feel like they're there, just all day. One of the things at the track meet, we do a lot of statistics during the track meet, and I can literally tell you from the time a kid checks in to the clerking area till the time he crosses the finish line, how long he was at each station. So
really?
we know, yes, we know how long that kid it's within our guidance. And if my staff know that I am so anal that if a race is supposed to go off at, let's say, 11 a.m., probably about 10, 15, 10:30, I'm visibly upset, and I'm sharing that, with my staff. in specific terms, because an 11 o'clock race means 10:59. It does not mean 11:05, 11:30, 11:50, 12 o'clock. Because you have people that have came to enjoy an event. They paid to come from all over the country. So they should be treated with the respect of us spending the time and putting together a schedule. So we spend a lot of hours working together on the schedule. And then even after the event is over, I can go back during the course of an event and tell you, by the time my plane lands back at home, I know where we were behind schedule. And we're rarely more than about 15, 20 minutes behind schedule. And if we are 15, 20 minutes behind schedule at 11 a.m., I can tell you that I expect to be back on schedule like 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock. So being behind schedule is totally not acceptable. But to get back, to the big point that you have, you spend a lot of time, working, anticipating the number of athletes you would get, putting together a schedule to accommodate those, being able to make necessary adjustments. But a big part of that is also sharing your philosophy with those 216 officials, that they understand that there's a big picture here and what is my role, in this picture, and that they must manage their role in this picture, in the big picture, because if they do not, then the wheels comes off, somewhere. And it may not be with you and your role. It may be someplace else, but if you're 5, 10, 15 minutes slow or behind schedule or whatever, it just amplifies as you go on. So that's kind of the big picture, of the event management side of it, as far as I'm concerned, is the number of officials, recruiting officials, having a philosophy, working on the schedules. I'm sorry.
What about like there's marketing of the meet? You mentioned people paying, and while obviously some of that is the parents and such, but there still are people, fans in the area that will come to pay. So there's marketing. Take a full step back. There's finding the venues, people bidding on the actual venue itself.
Yeah, with the events, the size and the magnitude of what we are able to do in AAU right now, we have some of the largest youth meets, in the country. Like I said, AAU Junior Olympic Games, we expect 11 to 12,000 every year, wherever we go. That's the minimum. We've had up to 13,000. We'll have 6,000 athletes, at Disney. We were up to almost 3,000 at our indoor, championship. So these are some of the largest meets in the country up under any, umbrellas, outdoors, indoors, and stuff. So, as I said, there again, we spend a lot of time, marketing, event. Some of my thought processes are different from some other people. One of my analogies is, the old baseball movie, I think with Kevin Costner, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
I disagree, because if they don't know you built it, how are they going to know to come? Okay? It's just sitting in the middle of the doggone cornfield.
Right.
Nobody knows it's there because they can't see it. So you've got to tell them that you built it and why they should come. So I strongly believe in the marketing, aspect, of it. We're fortunate enough to have events at some of the best facilities, in the country. We always try to go to places that I've seen both sides of the industry. We try to go to places that actually want us to be there, want to be a part of the product that we're putting out, not just from the perspective of, okay, we said we're going to go and now they can sit back and it's all over. No, help us put together a positive product, because one of the philosophies part of the philosophy I had at the University of Tennessee when I was managing events at Tennessee, and we had some of the top events, in the country while I was there. NCAA championship, USATF championships, all the way down. But my thing of it was, you should always protect your house, because when people came to the University of Tennessee, a lot of times they wouldn't say they came to the track meet. They would say, hey, You remember when we was at Tennessee?
Mm-hmm.
Because the people they were talking to, they came to that track meet, so they know what track meet you're talking about, but they're saying, you remember when we was at Tennessee? Well, me and my staff, we were the at Tennessee. This was our house. So we want to make sure that when you left, you had a positive experience.
Mm.
And a lot of times the positive experience isn't always just the track meet, because the people that's sitting in the stands, if they have a problem in the parking lot, they're going to bring it into the stadium. And when it gets to me, they're going to be pissed off. And I don't know why they pissed off, because the track meet's going fine. But
right.
on the outside,
Yeah.
or the problem getting in the gate. So that's our little part of marketing and promotions, is making sure, and this is part of my idea of event management, managing the entire event, making sure that our customers that are sitting in the stands, that the athletes come in, they have a positive competitive opportunity there at the facility, that mom and dad, have a good time. Because even in youth athletics, little Johnny, 5-year-old little Johnny, he can't get there if mom and dad don't bring him.
Right.
So if mom and dad get mad, mom and dad don't come back, little Johnny ain't coming.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not gonna have that 13,601 just became 13,600, and it keeps going that way. So a part of my basic philosophy is not just about the athletes on the track, but also a positive, experience throughout. Because you take it a step further, if coach doesn't like what happens at the event, coach doesn't bring the 16, 17, 18-year-old to your event. So you have to we try to put together items that makes something for everybody, that everybody's happy.
So the pre-planning process starts minimum of a year before. And obviously, from hearing your passion about not just little Johnny and the event that he or she is doing, but your accountability level sounds fairly high as well. And I know from knowing you personally, I know your personal accountability is really high. So I think that's why it translates. At least that's what I hear when you're talking about the gate and the parking. What are you doing normally during the meet itself? You, the guy who's running, you're the meet director. I'm assuming you're not in the gate taking tickets. You're not down starting the races. So what is your job duties entail the day of?
My answer to that is twofold. One, a lot of times my staff, will say that, people look at me and say, well, you don't do anything at the track meet. And I like that perspective, because we've spent a year of track meetings, conference calls, talking with people, researching stuff, planning. So when the track meet come, hopefully, you're implementing that process. And I always say, I think there are like a couple of type of individuals at a track meet. Spectators and people, they understand when they see you and you're running around, there's a lot going on, and stuff. They get that because, hey, you're handling your business. In my mind, no. Mm-hmm. Because if I've got to run around and do all that stuff, something's wrong. So I'm not really showing you that we're under control. I'm actually showing you that there is a problem, because something that we've spent 12 months, planning, then that is not working, So that's one of the things that we really look at as we're trying to plan and handle, a track meet. And I try to let my staff educate them so that they can go forward and implement different processes.
Whenever we talk about this, and in my head the whole time, especially because of Tennessee, I'm picturing an outdoor track. But you mentioned some other meets. How many meets and what meets are you doing throughout the year?
Oh, two hats there. As national chairman of AAU, got approximately 100 track meets up under my umbrella.
Really?
Well, yeah, we have 8 national championships. We have 28 8 to 30 regional championships. Then you have about 40 district championships.
Wow.
And then just a licensed, AAU meet. So trying to put together procedures and stuff where people get the same quality event as they're going through, AAU. And, obviously myself or my staff, stuff, we cannot be, at every event, but it's spending a lot of times with the meet directors and making sure that they understand what they see at the top meet, that how do you get it to come down, to their event. But also just my personal company, Coach O, event management. I think I was looking, we are scheduled to manage about 18 to 20 events, this year, anywhere from meets that my company personally owns to collegiate meets. I do five meets a year, Clemson's indoor facility. My company manages that, and we also consult if there's any other outside events, conference championships, or anything like that. My company is actually on site, to manage whatever needs to be managed for Clemson. But SWAC, cross country indoor and outdoor championships. I've done the SIAC outdoor cross country and championships, and we got Mississippi State, on the schedule. We've done Coastal Carolina meet. So right now this year, I think we're about 18 meets that we either own or manage.
Wow, that is I think about it when I coached, we would host 1 or 2 meets a year, and then we would attend, let's say, 12 meets a year. You're doing, 10x of that in a year, in different capacities, of course. But man, that is amazing. How do you keep up with all of that? That's a lot of meets.
Great staff. Great. Yes.
So we ask Twitter for questions for our guest, and that's a great segue to one of the questions we had for you. A good friend, Corey Mistretta, head coach of Southeast Louisiana, he asked, he must know you well enough, because he asked, it seems like you never tire and you never age. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see this guy looks like $1 million. Let me tell you what, I hope one day when I'm as old as you, Coach O, that I already got the hair going. I'm matching up with you there, man. I got to get that this little goatee thing you got going on. That's pretty cool. I like it, actually. So Coach Mistretta says, it seems like you never tire and you never age. And if you've been around Coach O, it definitely seems like you never tire. You're the Energizer Bunny when it comes to that, my friend. How do you stay so enthusiastic and young, especially with how hard you work all year? Coach Mistretta wants to know.
Well, I really enjoy what I do. It's not work. It's fun. It's a leisure activity. I enjoy being around the sport of track and field. I enjoy the individuals such as yourself that are in track and field. So I never look at it as work. It's fun, more fun, and more fun. And I would say a lot of times for me, some time off, I will actually leave my office, which is at my home. I'll leave my desk and just to take time off, and I'll go to another room and I'll watch TV. Well, while I'm watching TV, on my left side is my cell phone, and on the right side of me is the iPad. And on every commercial, I'm gonna pick up one of them and send a text message or email or read an email or something like that. So I just really enjoy the sport of track and field and the people in the sport of track and field. I just can't get enough of it.
Well, before we get into your backstory, because it's super interesting, let's learn something a little bit off the track for you. You mentioned you're watching TV, and of course you got your iPhone and your iPad, which begs the question, why does anybody buy commercials nowadays? Because I think that's most of us. As soon as the commercial comes on, we're picking up our devices. What do you watch when you're watching your Netflix or your ABC or whatnot? What's your shows? What are you into?
I knew you were going to go to that question. And I think this is a funny story, but I'm going to tell it and we'll see what everybody else thinks. And as I was talking to my grandkids, my grandson one day, and my grandson said, "Granddad, why do you always watch the Gray Channel?" I'm like, Gray Channel? So it took me a while before I could figure out the gray channel. Well, the gray channel is the cowboy pictures. They're black and white before you colorize them. So he was like, "Why, Granddad? Why you always watch the gray channel?" Even now, when we got home here, I literally turned the TV to the gray channel, and I've got a cowboy picture, on mute, here now. So I will watch cowboys. And when I was growing up on the weekend, I got up on Saturday mornings with I think Raw Rogers, and probably went to bed at that night with Lone Ranger or Rawhide. So I love watching the gray channels.
I love hearing the thoughts of young people. They see it differently than we do. We wouldn't have called it the gray channel, being like, oh, I just want to watch because that's what I watched when I was young. And they're thinking, oh, it's the gray channel. Like, we got color now, right, Grandpa? Like the world's in color. We get to see everything now.
It took me a while to figure out the gray channel. I just couldn't get it. And I was like, oh man.
That's awesome. How old is he?
He's 11.
Oh man, that's precious. That's awesome. I got a 10-year-old, so I could see that. Yeah. That's so awesome. Um, well, before we get to your backstory and how you got into track and field, I did want to ask you, mentioned about the meet management, and obviously it just seems so, there's just so much to it. I mean, I picture this like 1,000-piece puzzle. I'm like, here's a little piece of puzzle for marketing, and here's the athletes, and here's the officials, and here's our inclement weather plan. I mean, so much, maybe even a lot of planning goes into stuff that never even happens, right? I mean, the contingency plans that never even occur. Well, one of those pieces of puzzles that no one would have thought a year ago from today would have been the COVID puzzle piece, right? And you guys held a successful Junior Olympics down in Florida. Where was that at? Was that at Miramar?
Satellite Beach.
Satellite Beach. Okay.
Satellite Beach.
And so you held a successful Junior Olympic meet there with how many athletes did you end up having?
A little over 2,000, I think 23.
Yeah. Which is probably far below your normal numbers. However, that probably was the largest meet we had last year.
I think so.
Yeah, I would think so for sure. And from all I can see, lots of success. I mean, kids came in, everybody was healthy, officials, etc. What did you learn going into that meet that we can use in this upcoming season? We're still going to have some restrictions, I guess maybe is the word to put it, but we're gonna have to make sure we're doing some things differently in this upcoming season. What are some things that maybe you guys learned or post learned that maybe that you're going to be implementing in your meets that you're hosting and we could learn from in our meets?
Well, I think one of the biggest thing was, and a lot of people, they don't reach out to the assets around them. They have a track meet and they think that they are an entity unto themselves, and there's nobody, to help them. We spent a lot of time, really, we did more of it this year. And I will tell you, it was harder work for 2,300 athletes than it was 13,601 just because of COVID. And see, another thing is when you go through the pandemic, and everybody say, well, we're going to follow all state, federal, and local guidelines, but what do they actually do? And where are they getting that information, from? And as the information go through the chain of command, it's like gossip. It has a tendency to change, and stuff was so fluid even now, within the pandemic. But some of the things that we did, we worked directly with state, federal, and local, agencies, getting whatever the current information today, is. And even as I was talking to different individuals, they would call and they want to know, hey, are you going to have the meet or what's going on? I started out by saying, well, at this moment, this is the situation, because I want you to understand, if you call me back in 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days, I may tell you something totally different. And I didn't lie to you. I told you what was, the situation at that moment. So we spent a lot of time, working and getting information from those organizations, but also as it pertained to the actual event with the COVID guidelines and social distancing and keeping people separate and sanitizing, everything. What is an appropriate sanitizing agent? because it says it on the bottle, that doesn't mean that it does what you need it to do. So we had to educate ourselves, up on that. How do you, and one of the things I would go back and say that we were adamant, about during this process was keeping the sport of track and field intact.
Mm.
They tell you, and in one of my examples, you got to stay 6 feet apart. Okay. And I get you got to stay 6 feet apart. But you're not gonna tell LeBron James to stay 6 feet away from that guy with that ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you can't change the sport of track and field and do something that's totally without with outside of the realm of the sport and think you're gonna still have, the same sport. So our goal was to be able to keep the sport as it is and have a safe, environment. And so with this, we put together the number of athletes that we thought that we could accommodate, safely in the facility, put the parameters in place where we felt like we could actually, still stay, on schedule. We looked at what events that we thought we could or could not or should or should not do. At that time, it was still fairly early and nobody really had any ideas on how to do the pole vault, and a high jump because of the porous, landing pad. So we spent a lot of time, on that. And I can tell you that we spent, I would say, 4 weeks of a daily conference call Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. to go over all of this for a month. We would spend at least an hour, 5 days a week. And that's just that conference call. One day, I spent 8 hours on the phone, one day, talking to, a variety of individuals, and stuff, just in the planning, process. So that was we spent a lot of time just trying to make sure we had parameters to keep people safe.
Well, in success, because a great meet was held, and kids that didn't have any season last year in 20 got at least a meet if they didn't get a couple of meets here and
One
there.
other thing, Mike, can I share this
Please.
with you? I'm really proud of another thing that we did. First of all, we hosted an event, and in AAU, what our goal was is to show you how to host, to show individuals how to host an event. Not everybody, but people sitting back saying, well, first of all, you can't do. Everybody knows what you can't do, but what can you do?
All right.
How do you do it? So what we wanted to be able to do was take the lead, show people how to host, a safe
Hmm.
event, while everybody's sitting back talking about what you can't do. Well, what can you do? And then after we set the parameters to host an event, we realized that high school seniors didn't have a place to compete, and they were losing scholarship opportunities because they didn't have the marks for their senior year. So what we did, we had already set the number of athletes that we thought that we could accommodate for Junior Olympic Games. We had that all set. We looked at the dynamics of the situation with high school seniors, and we came back and said, well, look, we've got to try to do something for these kids to give them an opportunity, to compete, so they're not just totally left out. So we came back and specifically invited, I think 14 to 18-year-olds to come into our track meet and compete. And that gave them an opportunity to show the college coaches, what they were able, to do, during this year. So we was really pleased with that. And on another vein, I'm gonna say this because it ties into this just a little bit with the high school and athletes and development. The year before, when we had Junior Olympic Games at North Carolina A&T, as a part of our developmental, program and giving, promoting our kids, we went and identified all of the collegiate programs, okay, all of Division 1, 2, 3, junior college, and all of this, identified all those coaches, and we invited 343 Division 1 programs to come to North Carolina A&T. and we invited them over there, wanted them to wear your collegiate paraphernalia, the biggest, brightest, how we wanted you to be seen. We want you to see, the kids and have an opportunity to talk to the kids, the parents, or whatever the NCAA rules allowed for you to do. At that time, we also reached out to the NCAA and made sure that everything that we were doing was NCAA, legal. But we invited 343 Division I programs to come into and to come into the meet and do your thing. Whatever you need, let us know, because we want you to see that these kids, because they are coming to you, and we want you to have opportunity to see and recruit them.
What a great example of the service and servitude you're giving towards the athletes, because that was another, using that puzzle analogy, that's another piece that you had to do. You had to plan for the invitation and what to do, and you had to go check to make sure everything you're doing was going to be within their rules, etc. And you weren't there's certainly no ego play here. I don't see where AAU or you personally get like, oh well, Coach O did it for himself. It's like, oh, this is for the college coaches to see the kids. So the kids, maybe a kid gets seen that wouldn't have in the past, and now gets a scholarship or gets a preferred walk-on, or gets a chance to go to college. I mean, that's just again, the servitude towards the athletes, the kids that make up the organization and the meet.
Yes, and that's what we were trying to do, is make sure that the kids have an opportunity to be seen. And we also formed a position, AAU academic advisor, over the last 18 months. And then you have your high school counselors, you have your coaches, and stuff, you have your parents. But we wanted to make sure that every kid had every opportunity to get the knowledge from wherever they need, to be able to prepare and do the things that they needed to do, to be prepared to go to college, or to make a decision whether or not to go to college, or whatever. So we put in a position for AAU academic counselor, so that the people can reach out to us on our side also.
Wow, that's interesting. I love that. That's cool, man. I admittedly don't know much about AAU. I stick primarily to NCAA. So, but I love, to me, it's all about the servitude towards the kids. If you're not doing it for the kids, then go find another business to be in, because everything that we do, us as equipment manufacturers, you as the national chairman of AAU track and field, officials, you name it, everything you do is built on the back of those athletes, whether you're talking about 5-year-old kids or up to the post-collegiate kids. If they're not on that track, jumping, running, throwing, we don't have a job. we have different jobs, I should say. Maybe we'll still work, I guess, but I probably wouldn't be at Gill, right? And you're not going to be at, you're not going to create your own business, which we're going to learn about here in a second. And event management in AAU, you're not going to be an official. You're not going to be anything if you don't have those kids willing to bust their butts on a daily basis and practice, and then show up and show out on the track meets.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Well, let's learn more about you, Coach O. So when I announced that you were going to be on the podcast, not many questions. I guess everybody just knows what you do. So then there weren't any questions. Corey had the only question, but there were a couple of just excitements. Miss Fatima Shabazz, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, on Twitter at Coach Shabazz. She just said, Coach O, no questions. That's just my guy. She's kind of just want to give a shout out. And then my new good friend of mine, he was on the podcast in December, I believe, Niall Lagania down at Dillard University. His reply was Coach O with like 3 or 4 exclamation marks. So I just love the excitement that surrounds you. And for anybody who has had any contact with you, I mean, it's your personality. And what I love about your personality is it's authentic. It's the same personality if you are the chairman of national champion of track for AAU, or if you're Bags by Coach O, or if you're an alum at a track meet at Troy. You have always been the same, the consistency there of the authenticity, which is just always been, admirable for me. And I know plenty of other people, obviously through their tweets, there were no questions. It was just like, oh man, that's the guy. That's my guy right there. So let's take a step back, Coach, before you became Coach O. So where did you grow up? How did you get into track, and why did you get into track?
I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. And when I was growing up, we had, I stayed on Fifth Avenue, and Fifth Avenue was the non-athletes. You know, a couple of us were in the band. Third Avenue had several athletes that were some of the best athletes in the city. I think we probably had 8 high schools in the city, and Third Avenue had some of the best athletes in the whole doggone city.
Hmm.
I grew up in a band, pretty nerdy. Decided, and actually I was in the first year of integration in Columbus, Georgia, and we integrated, and I felt like, well, okay, we've got the black population that's now diluted. We have 2 black high schools. You got the black population that's now diluted to 8 high schools. So I said, this is my chance. I want to be an athlete. This is my chance. So I go out for basketball. I make the basketball team, but I'm just good enough to play JV. Well, no seniors are actually going to play on the JV, team. I was just going to sit on the bench. So decided to go out for track and field. Knew almost nothing about the sport, track and field. I knew the 100, the 200, and a story how I became actually a quarter miler. You run, the 400 was 1 lap around the track. The 800 was 2 laps. So I knew I wasn't a sprinter. 100, 200 was not an option. Running 2 times around the track was not an option either. I was not going to run no more than 1 time. So it's like, okay, my only choice is to try, the 400 meters. And so tried the 400 meters and ended up, me and one of my friends from Third Avenue, we came down to being the last 2 options for the 4x1, relay. In some kind of way, the coach thought that I was a better option, and he picked me for that option. The last guy on the relay. But I will tell you that the other guy that I beat out, we used to have what we call block track meets. So we would run telephone pole to telephone pole would be the 4x1. So wherever the telephone pole was, 50 meters or 150 meters, you run to the next telephone pole and pass off the baton. Well, I anchored every time against the guy that ended up having, going against for the last spot at the high school. I anchored against this guy every time, and I lost every single time in on the block track meets. And coach some kind of way saw something and picked me for that spot, for the relay.
It's interesting. So you mentioned the end of segregation. So it was your senior year, if
That's
I
a
heard.
year.
Wow, that's interesting. It seems,
Integration.
not knowing the time frame, but that just seems late. Just that's amazing to me. It just amazes me that we had segregation. It just boggles me. But what's interesting there is you said you didn't actually know much about track and field. Today we talk about we kind of uplift the past and demonize the future and the present. We think about technology is terrible. We're all separated because of cell phones, and it used to be so good back in the day. We'd all talk, or we'd all read the newspaper. We tend to do that with track and field. We think about the good old days in track and field that you used to go to a meet back in the day and there'd be thousands of people in the stands, and today there's 10 people in the stands. But you didn't even have a track background. I'm surprised by this, knowing what you ended up becoming in track and field. I'm surprised there was no, you didn't fall in love watching an Olympics or anything like that, or there weren't meets on the TV all day and things like that.
I watched the Olympic Games, probably like everybody else when it was on. I just happened to, everybody around me, I understood the best athletes and the accolades, and stuff that they got. So I was like, okay, let me try it. And I literally went out for track and field March of my senior year. And by June of my senior year, I was undefeated and state champion in the 400 meters.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, man. Thank goodness for your personal attitude of not wanting to run more than 1 lap and the genetic decision of you were not going to be a 100-meter guy. That's awesome. Wow. So what did that do for you in regards to, did that open up any doors? Is that how you got to Troy? Like, were you going to go to Troy? In for perspective, he grew up in Columbus, Georgia. Troy University is a hour and a half. I don't want to say 2 hours, is it?
Hour and a half.
Yeah,
Hour
I'll
and a
say it's under 2. So it's a fairly close university, but you're in Columbus, Georgia. There's other schools there and other schools in Georgia, obviously. Is that what led you to Troy, or were you going to Troy no matter what?
Well, what happened during my senior year in high school, my father got sick and was hospitalized most of the year. So like I said, I ended up, getting a scholarship, and I'm going to throw this part in there. I was not going to go to college. I'm in May of my senior year. I took the SAT simply because it's something that they say you're supposed to do. So I was not going to go to college. One of my senior English, she taught me English and French. And she told me, she said, if you don't take that scholarship, I'm going to kick your butt. I'm going like, oh, you can't talk to me, like that. But obviously, it resonated. So I started looking at potentially going to college. Since my father was sick, I wanted to stay close to home. There was a school in state that I assumed, being in state, it was closer. And it was about 2 hours away. And Troy was only an hour and a half, but because it's out of state, I'm thinking it's farther. Well, one of my ended up being my teammates, James Beatty, was from Columbus, Georgia, and he was on the team, there. So Troy brought me down for a visit. One of my friend, well, wasn't a friend at that time, but guys from my hometown, James Beatty, was there, and he was one of the top, 100-meter sprinters in the country in any division at that time. But the thing that got me at Troy, I went down, didn't even know Beatty. Okay, I went down, I had a visit. I felt like those guys treated me like I was family, like I was one of them. They made me feel really, really comfortable. So I was like, well, hey, I'm going to go to Troy. I feel comfortable. I feel like I fit in. My personal goal when I went to Troy, like I said, I didn't know anything about track and field. So my personal goal, I said, I'm going to go to Troy, whatever school I go to, I'm going to be the top quarter miler on the team. Whatever it takes, I'm going to be the top quarter miler. Now, I did not know when I got to Troy that my teammate was a senior conference champion and conference record holder. I did not know that. I done made this commitment to myself that I'm going to be the top guy on my team. I may not beat nobody else in the whole country, but I'm going to be number one on the doggone team. And I ended up, as a freshman, being conference champion and conference record holder as a freshman. Not trying to brag, but I will say that I ran 1 year in high school, 2 years in college. I did not lose a race until my third year of being college, and was ranked in the top 10 in the country, in the US during the time.
What division was Troy back then? NAIA or Division II?
Troy with NAIA. They were in.
And back then, talk to us about, wasn't there something like, even if you weren't Division I, if you were any other division and qualified, you could still go to the Division I championship? Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was, but being NAIA, I don't know if it was a time or a place, but you could actually qualify to go to Division I, championships. And I qualified, and one of the things I think was funny, I said in my career at Troy, at NAIA, I got third place so many times at the national championships that I swore that whenever they did the plaque, they just went and put my doggone name on the doggone plaque. Nobody else had a name on there, but I got third place so many times that they just went and put my name on because they said, hey, he gonna be third. I ain't saying that bragging. I say that, but I did qualify for Division I twice. I think in 1976, I was fifth at University of Texas. Ironically, University of Tennessee, which I ended up coaching at, were the national champions. They won the national champion, and a guy from University of Tennessee won at 400 meters. And I was in the top 6th or 7th as a senior, in college.
Was that, you're coming from quote unquote small town, Troy University, Troy State back then, NAIA, how big of a deal was it to be at the Division I national championship as an NAIA athlete, or was it just another national meet, another big meet?
Well, for me, it was a big meet, but I really enjoyed it because there were no expectations. I I say I was a poster child for anemia for one. I was 6'4", 147 pounds. In high school, I bulked up at college, went 6'4", 153 pounds. Okay. I was a poster child for anemia. And I'm at an NAIA school. So nobody knows who I am. Nobody's expecting me to do anything. So I had the ability to line up. I remember one of my freshmen, I think my sophomore year, we were in Atlanta. It's a meet in March, and they start naming the people in the race. I know all these names, so and they say I think it was Julia Zhang or Robert Uku from North Carolina Central just got back from the Olympic Games and went 43.7. I stopped and turned around because I wanted to see what a 43.7 guy looks like, because I had never seen one of them. But I was able, to be in a race. Nobody expected, my size on NAIA guy, but my times were the same as everybody else. Like I said, I had a time that ended up being top 10, in the country in all divisions, so there were no expectations. I always say I could sneak up on people. By the time they figured out who I was or the ability that I had, it was at the finish line. It was too late.
Well, it sounded like you were so tall and skinny, you could just hide behind like a hurdle, a skateboard or something, just and then, oh, there he is all of a sudden.
Some of the bigger, bulkier guys, most of the guys doing that at that time was a lot, they were tall, but they were muscular.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Well, I remember seeing, I know Beatty was a 100-meter guy, but I remember seeing pictures of him. He was, I would not have fought him at any point of his life. He looked like a strong dude, let me tell you.
Yes, yes.
So put this into context, obviously, top 10 in the country, national champ, undefeated for quite a while. What kind of times were you running in the quarter?
And just briefly, I was state champion at 48.8 as a senior. I ran 47.2 as a freshman in college, 45.8 as a sophomore in college, and ended up with a PR of 45.41. And I finished 8th in the Olympic trials as a senior there at Troy. Unfortunately, at that time, they only took the top 6 to the Olympic Games, and now they take alternates and all kind of stuff. But they took the top 6, and they took the top 6. They did not come down to the top 8.
And you're talking about an event that has a strong depth in this country as well. It's not like 8th was like, oh yeah, you're way back there. It's like, oh, any 2 guys get sick or doesn't show up, you're in the hunt.
I mean, and I always saw, even though with my size and everything, my 400-meter times were top of the top in the country. And at one point in my sophomore year, I had the fastest time in the world for like 6 weeks.
Wow.
But I've also I relayed 45 flat, also. So I always felt like, and during those days, if you were a 45-second quarter mile, you were, world class. So I always felt like if I'd have got there, I would not have let my team down.
You were school record holder. Do you still own the school record, or did we have someone here in the last couple of years?
I still own it. Yes.
You still own it, man. That tells you, and we've had some great coaches and have some awesome ones now. That tells you how stout that record is. Holy cow. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I did not know. I mean, everybody hears me talking about Troy University, so of course I'm going to geek out when I have a Troy alum here. I didn't know I still had a school record holder Troy alum on the podcast today, though. It's a little bit special. As a guy whose son's name is Troy, you're the exact reason. You're one of the people that that university is built on, that helped guide me towards naming my son after that university. That's why it's such an honor, honestly, to talk with you, Charles, because you're built on a legacy that means so much to me as a person in so many different aspects. So talk to us. What were you studying when you were there, and what were you thinking of for as a career at that point?
And I think a bit of irony. I always wanted to own my own business, and so I went to Troy as a business major. And my college roommate was a business major, and he, at that point, he was a senior and he was struggling with some of the upper level business classes. So, I looked at him and I said, you're a smart dude and you're struggling with this business class. and I ain't very bright. So how in the world am I going to get a business degree? You know, so I came up with the idea that I'm going to be a PE major, because in PE, the way I figured it, and I ain't very bright, I already said that, but the way I figured it in PE, that half of a PE degree was mental and half of it was physical. So I figure if I'm an athlete, so I ought to have 50% of the physical part of it. And all I need is half of the mental part of it. I got 75. And that's gonna put me DC. That's gonna put me passing credit C. So I figure, well, hey,
not even 50-50 to get to 100. You were like, all right, well, I can get 25 of that half.
yeah. So I figured if I could get 75, then I'm gonna pass and I'll be able to graduate, and move on. So that was my thing. And I think a bit of irony, I end up years later, in business,
Were you, I'm assuming, this first person in your family to graduate from college?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'd assume during that time frame. Yeah.
First person on my side of the family ever go to college.
Yeah, yeah. So you get a PE degree from the greatest university in the world. What was your first job out? What were you doing? Were you teaching?
I came back home to Columbus, Georgia, and they hired me to be track coach, head the bad kids, in my room, and I coached.
You cut out just a little bit there. You said you got hired as the head coach.
I got hired as the head track coach, assistant football coach, and I taught. I had the in-school suspension, group, the bad kids. So I spent all day with the bad kids before I could get out to the track.
Someone tells me you were really good at that, though. And what I mean by that is what they needed, the quote unquote bad kids. I felt like you have a pretty calming presence.
We had a really good, relationship. I don't know, with my personality, I had all the bad kids, and the school's philosophy was, you treat the bad kids bad. Well, all of the kids wanted to come to coach's room. They'd come to my room before school. It wasn't good, but I'd have kids, I think they would go get in trouble just so they could come spend the day, with me. They'd come by and say, Coach, I'll see you at second period. So they go do something so they could get put in my room. I was like, whoa, that's not the way this is supposed to work.
That's a bad reward system.
Yeah. So
did you get the nickname Coach O right off the bat there?
No, I think Coach O evolved when I went to college and I was a freshman. My senior roommate gave me the nickname Charlie O, and I think there was a Charlie O'Connell, there was a Charlie O Finley. There was about 3 different Charlie O's at that point. So he started calling me Charlie O, and I didn't like it, but he was about my size and muscular, and I was my size and skinny, and so whenever I protested, it was painful for me. I lost every one of those physical conversations. So I became Charlie O, and then it evolved as I became a coach. It just kind of morphed. It changed over to Coach O.
So you're teaching and coaching, and Charlie O becomes Coach O. Thank goodness. No more physical conversations. I love that term. So keep going. What happens? Where do you go from there? And eventually, and I thought it started pretty early, you do start your own business.
Yeah, when I got to the University of Tennessee, I left Troy and came to the University of Tennessee. Upon arrival, I got to the University of Tennessee, I will say 1st of August. And within the first 2 to 3 weeks, our athletic director came and said that, hey, Dr. Leroy Walker is starting a minority seminar over at North Carolina Central. And he said, I want you to go. So I've only been in Knoxville 2 weeks and don't know nothing, don't know nobody, but my boss wants me to go to a 3-week seminar out of town. So Dr. Walker, he had a seminar. And what he did, he brought in about 20 to 25 minorities. And it wasn't a lecture series, He literally brought us in. We spent 3 weeks there. He brought in some of the top individuals in the country in their areas. And I remember, and I don't know the guy's name, but for example, this guy's talking to us, and he's over Fulton County Stadium at this time. He started out, and Dr. Walker was theory was to show us how you can do, stuff. And so this guy is telling us that he started out on the grounds crew in Fulton County Stadium, and just raking the ground. All right. Now at this point, he is the guy that just designed Fulton County Stadium for the '96 Olympic Games. He designed that facility with the thought in mind that when the Olympics left, part of this facility was going to be demolished and turned into another facility. So I'm going like, wait a minute, you just designed something to host the biggest events in the world with the idea that when it leaves, you're going to tear it down, not tear it down, but tear it down to where it's functional for another, sport. And I'm going, man, that's pretty good. And then another brief story, that was a guy that was, he was telling us he worked in Chicago, had a corner office on one of the lake area or something. He was on like the 100th floor. He got bored. I'm like, how do you get bored? Working in a corner office over the lake with a 6-figure salary. He got bored, started his own company and everything. And then his first customer was the company that he resigned from. Huh. So I'm going like, that's really neat. So Dr. Leroy Walker, we spent 3 weeks with him bringing in those caliber, of individuals, and they just literally told their life story. And as I listened to their life stories, I started thinking, I was like, well, I always wanted to be in business. I think I can do that. So I literally went back home and started my business because of the interactions I had with Dr. Walker and, the people that he brought in.
What was your job at University of Tennessee?
At that time, I was the sprint coach, hurdles, and jumps.
Okay, you were coaching. Yeah, okay.
And I did that for about 10 years and then went into event management.
Got it. Okay. And we did gloss over a little bit. You actually did go back to Troy University and were coaching there for a while as well.
When I coached in high school for 3 years.
All right.
Went back to Troy. The first year I was a graduate assistant, got my master's, and fortunately for me, my boss took another job and I got promoted to head coach at Troy University. So I spent a number of years as head coach there at Troy.
Did you get an MBA or did you do a different kind of master's?
Got my master's at Troy.
Yeah.
BS master's.
What was it? I missed that part.
I got my BS and my master's at Troy.
Right. What did you get your master's in?
The secondary education.
Yeah. Okay. So you kept on that education side. Yeah. Then you go to Tennessee and you're coaching there, and then into event management, which you were the meet manager for the very famed Sea Ray Relays, correct?
Yes, we had Sea Ray Relays, and we had two major sponsors. We had Sea Ray Boats that did the Sea Ray Relays, and then we had the Gatorade Track Classic.
All right.
So we had major sponsors right off the bat for the events that we were doing there.
Was it Sea Ray when you were there, or Dogwood? It was Dogwood before, right?
It was Dogwood, I think, but I competed in Dogwood. So it was Dogwood just before I got there. And I think when I got there, it was Sea Ray.
Okay, yeah. And I, it took me a long time. We used to go to Sea Ray when I was at Troy, and for a long time to realize what Sea Ray was. I had no idea that it was boats. I had no clue. I was like, I just went to the Sea Ray Relays. I had no idea what it meant.
Yeah.
So this seminar that you went to right off the bat seemed like it had a pretty big impact on you.
It did. It showed me from the ground up how I could actually go and do some of the things. Like I say, these people didn't come in. It wasn't a classroom setting where you got to take notes and pass a test. They just came in, hey, here's my life story. Take it for what it's worth. And I was able to take parts from different individuals, got motivated enough to be able to see the path that I could possibly take. And like I said, I went back home and literally stumbled up on a product that I was in my hometown. If we move forward a little bit, I was in my hometown of Columbus, Georgia, and I saw this store, and I was like, "Hey, been here my whole life. What's in that store? I don't know." So I stopped, and they made bags. And so one of the bags they had there, I say it was a toiletries bag, um, toiletries bag on steroids. It was 2 times the size of a toiletries bag. So I said, well, hey, um, this is about the size of a pair of shoes. So I took off my size 13. I put them in the shoe in the bag, plenty of room in the bag. So I was like, I think that as you're going to the starting line, this bag may be just big enough for you to put all your essential items in. And literally, it was big enough to, if you didn't have a really thick warm up, you could pull your warm up off, have your jogging shoes and all of that in there, keys, and some money and stuff. And so I brought it back home, put it in the washing machine, and I tugged on it, make sure the zipper, it was a good quality, product. So I called one of my college friends, Charles Fortune, over in Phoenix City. And I said, Charles, I'm thinking about starting a business. Here's my idea. He said, okay, send me a couple of dozen. So he bought a couple of dozen products. He placed an order for something for a product I literally didn't have. So I already had a customer before I had a business. Yeah.
You mentioned Charles Fortune over at Central Phoenix City, which if there's coaches listening, college coaches, if you've been around a long enough time, you've probably recruited one of his athletes, another great guy, in a tough area there at Phoenix City, and just does an amazing job. I remember Coach Fortune when I was an athlete at Eufaula High. We used to go to Central Phoenix City all the time for track meets, and boy, just one of the good guys. Like, made our team feel welcome, even though we were, a visiting team. Just a great guy, and again, a great Troy alum who is doing a lot of good things in our sport right there in his neck of the woods, right there in his network. He's just doing an amazing job with positive impacts on kids' lives. I love that guy. He's awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool that he was your first customer before you even had a business. That's so funny. that's a good business plan, by the way. So why did you pick bags? Did you have a background in, like, did mom or dad, anybody in the family work in textile industry or anything like that? Or was it just you saw a need and filled a need?
For a need. Like I said, when I stumbled upon the bag, um, and I realized, being at track meets all the time, one of the things that used to bother me was just the sound of a kid wearing his track spikes on the sidewalk. When he's off the track, you can literally hear, the spike on the concrete. And so I used to always watch and see that this kid, whatever he's got it in his hands. This was before everybody had matching bags and personalized bags and all of this. And so whatever the kid had, he had in his hand. So when I saw the bag, I mentally matched up the fact of that bag was probably big enough to accommodate all this stuff. I see these, if nothing else, these high school, middle school athletes, all they had was a pair of shoes. So I figured like this might be something that, inexpensive that we could put them into to carry the products and stuff that they had.
Did you literally go back home? Did you start sewing and putting all the zippers and everything on your own, or how did you work that first set?
I literally ordered the bags from Columbus, Georgia, had them shipped to Knoxville, Tennessee, had a local guy that would screen the bags, for me. And then I would ship them out. Well, the problem with that process was the local guy basically had a print shop, an RV where he would go do NASCAR. So he was always on the road, doing NASCAR. So I had to wait till he was back in town to print my stuff. And then as he printed it, I would get it and ship it out. Well, one of the founding principles in my business has been built off of personal relationships. Okay. I asked my family and my friends to give me an opportunity, give me a shot. But now when you give me a shot, I've got to give you a good product. I just can't give you a piece of crap because you gave me a shot. Well, when I first started, this guy would screen the bags, not give them and ship them out. Well, when he would screen the bags, I'm looking at it and I'd have to turn my head like this so that the print would be straight,
Mm.
because he literally printed it, crooked, and I was shipping it out. And one of my top customers at that time, I'm going like, this, he's got to know that this print is crooked. He's got to know it. And he never complained that the print on that bag was crooked. And 8 to 10 years later, he called me up and he said, Charles, you're going to be in Atlanta for the 96 games. I said, yeah, I'm going to be there. He said, I want to meet with you. He literally sat down with me, and said that he's been with me from the beginning and he wanted to be a partner, in the company. And, I said, well, I don't really want, a partner, because I don't want to be responsible for losing anybody's money. If I make $1 million, I made $1 million, but I sure didn't lose $1 million of your money,
Right.
So, but my point here with this is that he never complained. And so, I was like, okay, as I'm growing and stuff, I got to make sure that when I'm putting products out, that I was putting the best out that I could. I couldn't do no better. But then as we got, better at what we were doing, that even strengthened our resolve to make sure that the product that we were putting out there was quality, products.
So how do you expand? Because you can't live on a shoe bag, a very functional shoe bag, forever. How did the business continue to expand?
Well, literally, bags was a hook, but then I was able to start putting together a set of bags for uh, schools such as Troy University. Troy at that time didn't have a Nike contract, or didn't have a contract, but I could go out and find those small schools, sell them a series, of bags. So now when they're getting off their vans and stuff, they've got bags with their school logos, and so now they look more like a Tennessee, SEC, type school. So because of a relationship with different coaches and friends I had, I was able to, have a lot of major colleges, carrying, my products. And I've had some of the top colleges in the country, that carried my products. But in that, we started selling promotional watches for your relay meets. If you could do, gave watches for a relay meet, you were big time, for your invitational. So I started selling watches and batons and different items, like that. And then everybody would order team shirts for their team, and you don't have a Nike contract, you're paying for them anyway. So it evolved into me doing all of that. And then I got into the online registration, company. We were literally doing online registration by hand at this time. And I think I was the first, or one of the very first online registration, companies. Was me and my high tech, guy, we were sitting down and doing, doing entries, and he has a background in computer programming. He said, well, hey, I think that I can write a program, to do this. It's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We're doing 3,000 athletes by hand. I said, well, hey, if you can write it, I can sell it. He wrote it. So I put it up, we put it out on the market, and within the first time we launched that program, I would say it was like 99.9% accuracy from day one. Then by me doing, so started a online registration company. So I got Bags by Coach O, then as a Coach O registration, online registration. And then I was already doing event management. And then people started calling me and asking me would I come and do their meets. And one of the first meets, I had just done the NCAA regional meet at University of Tennessee, and the University of Louisville asked me would I come and do it for them. So I was like, sure, I'll come. Well, I literally just packed up everybody at University of Tennessee and took them to Louisville and did their meet. So well, okay, I can take this show on the road. So then we started doing, collegiate championships primarily, and any other invitationals at that point.
What has been, as you look back on that, we went through a lot of years really quick there, but what has been your not defining, what's been your strong suit? I mean, you go from bags to meat entry. That's a leap. Like that there's no progression there. It's not bags to the machines that made the bags. You went from cloth to technology, and then you go from almost another way. You went from technology back to people, meaning the actual meat management side of things. Why such a diverse path there underneath the same umbrella of track and field?
Well, I think it's being lucky, fortunate, or you know, keeping an eye on the surroundings of whatever, being involved in the sport and seeing what's needed. Um, I saw some needs and was fortunate enough to be able to to meet those needs, and a lot of times with those needs is relationships and stuff, also you see the needs, and you connect the dots with some people that have the abilities to help you meet those needs. And so I saw the needs, and have relationships with people, and a lot of times people just need a platform, to move forward.
I think, I don't know the exact stat, but I think most new businesses fail within, I want to say it's 1 to 3 years. I know like restaurants, it's like 90 days or something like that, but most businesses do not succeed for decades. And you built a business that not only survived but thrived, but did it in a time before email list, cell phones. How did you grow a business with none of that technology around at all?
Uh, and I'll mostly say, no relationships. Um, during this time, I literally, would ask, people around me, give me a shot, okay? You are going to spend $5 on this product anyway, okay? Now you're going to spend $5 with a big name company because you're comfortable with the big name company. I'm nobody other than a personal relationship with you. Will you trust me to give me your $5? Okay. Or a lot of times I would charge 4 or 3.50. Spend your money with me, knowing that I'm going to give you the best product that I possibly can. I'm not just going to ask for your money and give you, something, not a good product. So once you trusted me, and I gave you a good product, now the product markets itself, because everybody's looking for the next new item. They're looking for something different. And what is that? Where did you get that? So now, my personal relationships would say, well, hey, I got this from Coach O. He did this, for me, good product, got it to me in a timely manner, give him a shot. So that's how I've been able, and you have your marketing mechanisms, now, but I also like this, say it still comes back a lot of times to personal, relationships, as a foundation. Marketing is just simply to let people know that you built it, that it is, here. But you want to know that when, and throughout my business, my 1-800 number came to me. So you got me. You didn't get a guy that couldn't make a decision. You got the guy that would make the final, the decision. Um, so that's a little bit how we were able to expand.
And you haven't mentioned marketing's cousin, branding. You latched on to the Coach O fairly early, and it's still with you today. I mean,
Mhm.
people don't know you as Charles Oliver. People do, but when you say Coach O, that's when people like everybody's eyes and lighten up. It's like, oh, Coach O, yeah, I know Coach O. So it seemed like you kind of understood the branding aspect of business fairly early as well.
I was very meticulous, in the brand. Not a whole lot happened, um, by accident per se. I may not have known how to do it, but I was doing it intentionally wrong, or doing it wrong, intentionally or whatever, but I was very meticulous on putting the brand out there and trying to develop a brand. I did not let my brand or my logo be seen in a light that I did not like. I had a guarantee when I first started out with the bags and stuff, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't like a bag, I will repair it, replace it, or refund your money in that order without any hassle. And I actually had a situation once. I walked up to a guy. I'll tell you two situations in terms of marketing. I walked up to a high school kid and he had a bag. It was raggedy. He had it pinned together, and everything. And I said, "Hey, man, didn't introduce myself." I said, "How do you like your bag?" And so he said, "Oh, I love my bag." So I introduced myself and I said, "It's my company. And what I'd like to do is give you a new bag, because I see that bag, it's torn up." He refused to give me his favorite bag. He would not take a new bag because I was going to take the new bag, the old bag, and throw it in the trash. He refused to do that because he loved, his bag. So I gave him a new bag, and then his friend, told me, he said, "Coach, that's his favorite bag." I was like, "Well, I'm glad, he loves it." So he would not, give it to me. But also in terms of branding, I ran a contest one time, and like I said, it goes back to relationships and knowing who you're dealing with. I ran a contest one time, and I told one of my guys, I said, "If you go to a track meet anywhere in the world, and you don't see a bag by Coach O, I'll give you $50. Okay. Anywhere in the world, I'll give you $50." And he came back to me. He said, "Coach, I was at this track meet. I was there all day, had not seen a bag by Coach O. They're getting ready to run their 4x4. And I'll be darned if a guy did not come in with a bag by Coach O." But now you can't tell anybody that because they'll come back and lie and take your $50. But I will share this example. One time, one of my boss was on the U.S. Olympic staff, and he was at the training camp somewhere over in Europe going into the Olympics. And he said, "You know what? Out of all of this paraphernalia and equipment that we give kids from all of these sponsors," he said, "I've been doing if a guy didn't come in with a bag by Coach O." And I was like, "Yes, yes, yes." So I was like, okay, but putting the brand out there, putting it in a positive, light, making sure that you back up the warranty, and stuff like that, that people are happy. They go back and they tell those stories for you.
Mm-hmm.
There was no marketing budget. They tell the stories for you.
Well, I love that. You're right, because it's one thing to say it, it's a completely different thing to do it. And I love that activity of, okay, if I'm going to say it, well, I'm going to do it. And even more, I love that story about your proactivity with that kid. It's one thing when a customer brings it to you, you should be doing the right thing and taking care of them, right? But when you proactively see a bag, it's like, oh yeah, that bag's seen its better days. I should probably replace that. That's a whole different level, and that's what gets you success for the brand, and because the brand is really the people behind it and what they do or do not do in relationship to customer service. Well, Coach, we're getting near the end, not of your career, thank God. But what does the next few years look for you?
Well, we're quite excited. We are launching a lot of track meets up under the brand. We have a lot of events that we literally will be announcing that we're going international. We're putting new track meets in, up under the Coach O brand in the country. We have several slated for countries, international competitions, and stuff like that. Um, Continue to just put out a good product and look for niches where we can give back and be more on the developmental end. So we're expanding our staff and assigning them various titles so they can go out into the industry, into those various niches, and be more supportive for other organizations.
That's awesome, man. I tell you, your life, just hearing the stories and some happenstance and some very specific decisions that you made, It just seems like your career, your life has been built on two things, the two themes that I got from today's conversation with you, Coach. One is servitude, doing what's right for others. How can I serve others? How can I do this for others? Not, I have yet to hear, we didn't hear at one point, did you say, well, I did this for me. I did this for myself. I wanted the glory. I wanted this, outside of, I wanted to be the best on my team when I went to college. But that's a great, that one is okay. We allow that ego. That's good ego. And then the other theme that I heard today was curiosity. You talked about that store in Columbus. You'd seen that store and you didn't know what was in it. Well, most people are just going to walk right by it. They don't even remember that store that they've never been in. But you were like, I wonder what's in that store. Let me just go check it out. It could have been a billion different things. Luckily for you, and honestly, luckily for a lot of athletes and coaches, it contained this bag. and you were curious about that bag, and you took that and built a brand, a business. What's great about business is not only, we tend to think of businesses only as the buying and selling transaction, that, customers came to you and they bought your bags, but businesses employ people. People have been through your company. They've had jobs. They've gotten experience from working with you and your company, and have gone on to go to other companies and perpetuate that leadership and that servitude. And that is the greatest gift businesses can do. But businesses don't start on their own. There has to be a person or people that are willing to sacrifice and give to do it. And you did it and continue to do it today. And that's what's just amazing about your story, is that it continues today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. We've been going back and forth to get you on the docket, and the persistence was paid off, man. This was a real blessing.
Well, thank you. As I said, Mike, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your program, and always, to just talk with you, man. Great times.
Always, man. Love you to death. Well, folks, that's a wrap. I just want to thank Charles for being on the show today. Coach O, just so authentic. I came through loud and clear here. And honestly, your openness to share just means the world to me. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the show. Even more importantly, if you found value in this conversation, maybe others in your network would too. So hit that share button, let Facebook, Twitter, and the rest of the gang know all about it. And come back next week. We'll have another great guest. Actually, we've got a surprise for you next week. It won't be one guest. We're going to have two guests coming up next week. And I did not plan this, but spoiler alert, they're also part of the Troy family. So we're going to do 2 weeks in a row of the greatest university in the world. So come back next week. We'll do it all over again and get even better. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you listening today.
Thanks, Mike.